structure, the arrangement of thought, and this is where we really begin to start working on our formal outlines and starting to really make sense of all the material that we're getting. And this may seem a little overwhelming at first, guys, but hang on. It's a learned process. It takes practice, just like, whenever you're writing a research paper, you have a few drafts of it. It's kind of that way with the outline, where you're just going to have to be patient. There's probably going to be a lot of changes, a lot of work to it, but this outline is meant to benefit you and help free you up and make sense of all of that information and data that you're acquiring. All right. So you're going to, just like with a report, you're going to need a thesis, and it's the same. It's that same necessity for that specific statement here in presenting. And so this really helps to develop a presentation, just like it helps to develop a report. It helps to develop a presentation. And so because of that, you're not just stopping at writing here. It moves on to movement, to verbal communication. And so as much as an outline in a report requires a lot of work, this one you really end up going an extra mile or two, reworking it, making sure that everything flows and everything is being communicated in a way that is the most efficient to make sense of your thesis. So there are a lot of different organizational ways that we can arrange our thoughts and arrange our information. And we're going to be going over a few of them. The first is chronological or sequence pattern. All right, and so this is just, you literally move in order. You can move forward, you can move backward, and so where you're just like first, second, third. And so when you are doing a demonstration speech, and a demonstration speech is essentially like a how-to. So how do you cook bread? How do you train yourself to run a 5K? All of those things. That is a demonstration speech. And so whenever you're typically doing that type of speech, where you're going to be doing is you're wanting to outline specifically what to do, and you're going to want to do that in order. For example, you guys know I'm a coffee fanatic. And so if I'm going to be making a French press, first, I'm going to be determining what flavor of blend I want to use. Second, I'm going to need to obviously gather the materials. And then there's an actual process. And it should, for guys, just a side nugget, for a good French press and pour over, you're looking at a good, 4 to 6 minutes. All right. So there's a process to making coffee, and then there's a certain way to enjoy it as well. Obviously, that's a speech for another time, but my other coffee fanatics in the class, you know what I'm talking about. And so that's an example of a chronological or sequence pattern. And this is something that when you're giving an informative speech, a lot of people do like to lean into, because it just, that structure helps to make sense of things. Another one is a spatial pattern. And so this is where your main points are going to be determined by physical placement. So if you're wanting to describe a certain experience, an event, or I don't know, a building, or, if you're wanting to describe your church, if you're wanting to describe your school, you could use the spatial pattern here. And so, for example, if I'm going to be describing the Oval Office, I would be doing it on the physical placement. So basically, what physical material is going to be used to describe this place, to give information on this place. And I would use that information to, or that data to convey the information of what the Oval Office is and looks like. Next is categorical or topical pattern. And this is another big one. The organization here, the main points are not necessarily specifically ordered. So, it's not as, I guess, rigid as your demonstration speech, where you would say, okay, well, the how to, first, second, third, fourth, this. And so this is probably your more versatile speech that you can give. You're not bound to that chronological order. And so you have a few examples here as far as, okay, well, different ways that you can arrange things and mix things up. But here's the thing is that you'll have to make sure, if you ever use this pattern, that all of your main points must point back to your thesis, must point back to your topic, your subject. It has to be easily distinguished, all right, that it's all related. Next is the cause and effect. This one is a little bit tricky. A lot of people like to do this, but you have to be very careful with this. So with this organizational pattern, obviously you discuss the cause and you want to show the results, which are the effects. Or you can do it the other way. And so it will either discuss the cause of something and show the results, or it will discuss the results and backtrack to the cause. And so here's where things can get really difficult is that if you're going to use this method, it has to be balanced. You can't just spend 60% or 70% of your speech talking about the cause where you don't really emphasize the effects. And so there has to be a balance in information where there's an equal amount of support for a cause and an effects. So most of the time, if you're going to lean towards one to putting more time into one or the other, you want to actually deal more with the effects. All right. Next is the problem solution pattern. This one, obviously, you do have to be careful with this one as well. And so this typically is a 2-point as far as main points go. And so you state your problem and then you state your solution. And usually this one is going to be used with your persuasive speeches. So whenever it comes to your informational speech that you're going to be putting together, I would try to steer away from this one, since this is going to be your first informational speech. And it is very easy to go persuasive. But this one is also very popular, especially whenever we move on to the persuasive speech. This pattern is probably your more popular outline to use. So at this point, guys, you're going to move into working in pairs, and you're going to complete this information. And what I want you guys to do is you're going to practice organizing your information, so creating a really rock awesome outline. So you're going to use the verses listed below to write an outline that presents the plan of salvation. So basically, here's all of the resources that you need to do, and just like you would write, and you would look at all the resources and write an outline for your research paper, it's the same with this. All right, and so I'll give you guys a hint for the outline to use. Think chronological or sequence pattern. All right, so as you're doing that, go ahead and go back in your notes, review over the chronological and sequence pattern. Use that as a framework of how to compose this outline. And then next is your homework. And you're going to be working on Which Is It on page 147 and 149 of your Sound Speech book. And this will be homework that is going to be due on Monday. In addition, you are going to be working on your topic selection and narrowing assignment, which will also be due on Monday.
I apologize for the interruption. 7th and 8th grade